with the final chapter for class 9 geography, that is population. Now let's first start with understanding why population is important and why do we need to study mechanisms to understand the population growth and population change. Now let's say there are two places, place A and place B. Now place A has numerous resources, numerous minerals, ample of reservoirs, and same happens with place B. But place A is barren and place B has certain population. Now where these resources would be used? This land is totally barren and I would say not reachable by human beings. So let's say it's a kind of isolated region. However, you have another place B which has all similar resources but has people who can harness those resources, who can use those resources. So definitely the resources at place B would be used. Now it's important to understand these resources make a meaning only if you have someone who can use those resources. So human beings, I can say, are the best producers because they will start mining activities, they would start agriculture or industrial establishments and act as producers for the existing resources that are present there. Again, those resources would be used by human beings itself, so they are the best consumers. So all the resources that we have on a given chunk of land are useful only if you can use those resources, you can harness those resources, and human beings act as a producer as well as a consumer for those resources. Now let's say an earthquake occurs at this place and an earthquake occurs at this place. What would be the difference? The calamity here would definitely make a significant difference, but this might not make certain amount of difference at a land section of A in comparison to land parcel of B because you have human beings who are affected. So you have any natural calamity, any disaster, any natural or man-made induced hazard that occurs would affect the land parcel B much more in comparison to land parcel A. Therefore, the study of human beings per se is important. Now when we say study of human beings, the most important thing is the people itself. So the population is the basic aspect. Now when we try to understand population, there are different ways in which different countries work around to understand the population growth and the population change. In India, we have the main census that enumerates all the population data. The first census in India was done in 1872. However, a complete census was done in 1881. In India, census is carried out every 10 years. So you had a census in 2011 and the next census would be in 2021. Now it's a kind of official enumeration of the population that is present. What all are the things that are studied under census? So under census, you won't believe there are nearly 1.5 crore schedules that are studied in Indian census. So we are focusing just on India right now. So in Indian census, there are 1.5 crore schedules which are available in 16 languages. That was for 2011 I am talking about. We are yet to come across what would be the scenario in 2021. So you have huge lot of schedules that are to be covered to enumerate the population. The basic things which we try to understand are the population size, the distribution of the population, the density, the growth, the changes. We'll look into all these one by one as we move forward. Now, when census is conducted in India, it's nearly 2.5 million enumerators. Enumerators are the people who work around counting the number of people around. So you have 2.5 million enumerators who worked for 2011 census. They were supervised by 2 lakh people or 2 lakh officers. And the most interesting part of India is India accounting for such a huge population with such a huge schedules huge number of schedules for the census have a total burden of $0.5 per person that is accrued, in contrast to the world average, which is $4.6 per person. So the cost of enumeration worldwide is on an average $4.6 per person, in contrast to where India has it at merely $0.5 per person, $0.5 per person. However, if we talk about the total cost of the census project, it was 2,200 crores for 2011. Now the motto for the census was, for the 2011 census was, our census, our future. The main thing that we must understand here are, in the world if we look around, every sixth person is an Indian. So India accounts for nearly 2.4% of the world's total area, but accounts for nearly 16.9% of the global population. So you have huge number of people who are surviving on a small piece of land. So proper allocation of resources and proper utilization is important. As we move forward, we'll understand that. Now half of the population in India is confined to these 5 states, that is Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh. So these 5 states alone constitute 50% of the population of India. Now if you see the demographics here, the first graph shows the changes, or I could say the absolute number of population growth. So as you can see, in 1901 the population was merely 2038 million, which increased to 1210 million in 2011. Now this is further expected to rise till 2100. However, the line shows the growth rate, and as you can see, starting, I would say 2011, there has been a drastic fall in the growth rate of the population, and this growth rate shows a declining trend. That means the number of young births are getting less. However, since the life expectancy is increasing, India in future would face more problem of old age people or geriatric population, I would say. That's the old age population. So the focus for medical issues, health issues would increase as you move forward in the century. Now if we look on to the top 5 states that we talk about, we already said these are the top 5 states which account for more than 50% of the population. However, the least populated states are Lakshadweep, Andaman Nicobar, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, Andaman and Nicobar, Andaman and Deep, sorry. So these 4 are the union territories. However, if the question is which is the least populous state, the answer would be Sikkim. And you have a kind of change that has been seen. So here are some of the important facts. The highest populous union territory is Delhi. The least population in any union territory is Lakshadweep. Highest populated state is Uttar Pradesh. Least populated state is Sikkim. Now if we come on to urban population, highest urban population is seen in Maharashtra in comparison to lowest urban population, which is Lakshadweep. Highest rural population is seen in Uttar Pradesh, and again lowest rural population is again seen in Lakshadweep. Now the density of population, as you can see here, the density of population on an average is 382. Now what is density? Density, when we say, it's number of people thriving per unit area. So I can say persons per square kilometer. Since square kilometers is a standard unit in India, we say persons per square kilometer. So let's say I have 2 patches of land. This patch is bigger than this, okay, and I have 5 people who are living here, and again 5 people who are living here. Then obviously the density for the people who are living in the first patch, patch A, would be more, because the land is limited and you have more people who are sharing the same land. So let's say these are the ratio of areas, in simple terms if we try to explain, which are allocated to each population. However, the ratio of land for this case would be much bigger. So density in case of A would be more than the density in case of B. However, if we talk about absolute population or the total population, it would remain same for both the cases. Since here there are 5 people and again here there are 5 people, the absolute number of population would remain same for both the regions, but the density would be different. A would be much denser than B. Now when we talk about population change, there are 3 primary things that we must understand. The first is the death rate, the next is the birth rate, and then the migration. Now death rate, if it is higher, what would happen? A higher death rate would lead to decrease in population. A lower death rate would lead to increase in population. So definitely the number of death rates would affect the total amount of population. The birth rate, again, if it is higher, it would increase the population, and if the birth rate is lower, it would kind of tend to decrease. Now migration can be both internal and external, and there are 2 types. Internal is within the country and international is outside the country. Again, there are 2 terms that we commonly use, that is immigration and emigration. Now as we see from the word itself, this is I. So I means in, that's the way you can remember. So that's coming in of the people, so moving in of the population, and that would increase the population. So you are adding more people to the existing land, so it would increase the population, and emigration is moving out. So you are decreasing the net number of people and the population would tend to go down. A phase in India from 1951 to 81 was a steady increase in the population. It was a kind of steady growth in the population. However, since 1981, population has started to decline, and since 2001, it is expected or it is believed that the further trends would be further greater decline in the population in the coming years. Now, any country constitutes both rural and urban population. Now, in India, you have a standard definition for urban population, and this definition varies from country to country. In India, we classify a region as urban based on 2 basic phenomena. The first is whether a place is a municipality, corporation, cantonment, or a notified town. All the other places which satisfy the following criteria are governed by these 3 rules, that is a minimum population of 5,000 people. Of this 5,000 people, 75% of the population must be employed in non-agricultural pursuits, that is non-agricultural activities. So if there is 75% population that is nearly in agriculture, that means it is a rural area, and the density of the population should be at least 400 persons per square kilometer. If these 3 conditions satisfy, we call that area as an urban area. Now in India, as you can see, there has been a significant growth in the urban regions. Now there are certain terms that we use. So you have the statutory towns, then you have the census towns, you have the urban agglomerations and the outgrowths of these urban agglomerations. So as of 2011, you have more than 377 million population that exists or that lives or dwells in urban area, and this accounts for nearly 31.16% of the total population. Now in India, there have been an increasing concept of million cities. So the million cities have increased from nearly 35 to 53 million cities in the present time, and of these you have 3 mega cities that have come into existence that have a population of more than 10 million. So million cities means a population of more than 1 million. However, a mega city is a population with more than 10 million. So Greater Mumbai, Delhi NCR and Kolkata are examples of mega regions. Now if we look onto the age composition, let's say we divide the population into 3 groups, 0 to 14, 15 to 59 and 60 plus. So I would say you have a kind of fragmentation in the society. So this is the young society or the young population. This is the working population, and then you have the old age population. Now these two, the young and the old, are dependent on their livelihoods onto the working population, that is 15 to 59 years of age. So the economic productivity of a nation is governed by this working population, and the two age groups, that 0 to 14 and 60 above, are considered as the dependent population. So you have the dependent population versus the working population, and the prosperity of any nation is determined by the proportion of working population that exists. So in India, if you look at the scenario, you have nearly 62% of the population that is responsible for 100% of the economic activities, I would say, because the remaining population that exists is dependent on the working population. So you have this fraction of the complete pie diagram that you can see is dependent on the remaining population. Now next comes the sex ratio. Sex ratio is number of females per 1000 males that exist. So you have the two graphs that you can see here. The first graph shows, or the first line graph shows the child sex ratio, and that is the sex ratio between 0 to 6 years of age, and the next is the overall that has changed from 941 in 1961 to 940 in 2011. That means despite of the efforts, you have the sex ratio that has remained more or less constant over the decade. There is a kind of minor variations that have been seen. However, there was a significant decline at 2 points, but it's again back to what it was at 1961. However, the sex ratio in the age group of 0 to 6 is the real cause of concern in the present day society, because it has sharply declined from 960 to 914, and that brings in special emphasis or special focus on girl enrollments, girl education, and promotion of girl child. So you have kind of sex ratio that you can see has declined significantly in the younger age groups. So you have a kind of more vigilance from the government or more focus of the government, which is coming on to the 2011 census, and there are hopes of improvement for 2021 census. Now this change or this ratio, if it is imbalanced, it would severely affect the demographics of the nation, and as a result you have or you should have a kind of balanced growth for the child sex ratio, or the general sex ratio should come at par, at least that would show a trend of a developing society, and it would show how the scenario has been changing or it has been maintained over the years. Now the next is, you have the highest sex ratio that is seen in Kerala, attributed to high human development index and high literacy in the region. You have lowest sex ratio in Haryana. Among the union territories, you have lowest in lowest in Daman and Diu and highest in Pondicherry. And then you have the highest child sex ratio that is seen in Mizoram and lowest is seen in Haryana. So Haryana overall comes into major picture with more focus on a male child. So you have a lot of work that has been going on in Haryana. Now let's come on to literacy. Literacy, as per the present definition, child of the age 7 years or up who can read and write is a literate person. So you have a significant change in the literacy rate that has been seen since 2001 to 2011. You have a kind of significant rise in the literacy population, literate population. However, it's important to note that there have been significant changes in the definition of literacy itself. This might be attributed to kind of increasing the amount of literates in India for the case of enumeration. So during certain period from 1801 to 2001, there was funding coming for kind of literacy programs in India. Till then you had a definition of 5 years and above as literate. So since it was seen that if the targets are not met, you would have decreased amount of fundings coming in from foreign institutions. So there was a need to kind of revive or strengthen this, and you had a kind of idea that was promoted to increase the age of literacy rate. So literacy rate when was determined at 5 years and above was shifted to 7 years and above, and this was a kind of breaking point for a steeper rise in the literacy rate. However, despite of all these, there has been a significant increase in the literacy rate, and that is attributed not only to a single gender. So since you can see, you have a sharp rise in the male and female literacy population, you have a gap in the literacy that has decreased over the time from nearly 27% to nearly 12%, nearly around 12%. So you have a kind of significant decrease in the gap of literacy between males and females, and that is a kind of remarkable achievement. If we talk about total literacy in India, it's nearly 74%. However, males account for 82% and females at 65%. You have highest literacy with Kerala, lowest in Bihar. Among the Union Territories, it's highest in Lakshadweep and lowest in Dadra and Nagar Haveli. And these are the data that is based on 2011 census. Now, if we talk about the languages, you have 41% of the population that speaks Hindi. Next comes Bengali, Telugu, Marathi and Tamil. In 2001, there was nearly 1.02 billion, which increased to 1.19 billion, and which is further estimated at 1.4 billion population in 2026. Now, we already classified the difference between dependent population and the working population. The next is, within this working population, the engagement in the kind of activity they are doing. So this working population can further be divided into 3 aspects. You have the primary population or the primary activities that involve the working population, that is agriculture and allied activities. You have secondary activities that mainly deal with manufacturing and industrialization or industrial activities, and finally tertiary, those are the service providers. So you have broadly 3 kind of activities or occupational structure that is visible in any country. Now, if we try to understand the workers classification, let's say the working population in India as per census is classified into main workers and marginal workers. Main workers are the workers who have an employment for more than 183 days in a year. However, marginal workers are those who have an employment for less than 183 days in a year. Now, in 1961, any person who worked at least 1 hour a day was classified as a worker. In 71, it was again considered the same. However, there was a reference period of 1 week prior to the date of enumeration whether he was working for at least 1 hour a day or not. The scenario changed. In 1971, there were 4 basic categories under which workers were classified. Since we are a predominantly agricultural based society, the classification was cultivators, agricultural laborers, household industries which include manufacturing, industries, services, repairs and everything, and others. So these were the only 4 categories that existed in 71. The same happened in 81 with a further classification of main workers, marginal workers and non-workers. 1991 was a breakthrough. 1991 had 9 categories of classification of workers, that was cultivators, agricultural laborers, then you have livestock, forestry, fishing, plantation and allied under one heading. You had mining and quarrying under one heading, manufacturing, processing under another. construction in a separate category, trade and transport, trade and commerce in a separate category, transport and communication in a separate category, and others. So you have these 9 categories that came into existence in 1999. However, in 2001 again the previous 4 categories were revived back. So what happened was, if you try to classify workers based on the kind of activities they are doing, it is really hard over the temporal period, because since you had the enumeration parameters that have changed over the years, you cannot really understand what is the exact scenario of growth in which sector. Now, as we said, the basic focus of Indian census is on birth rate. Then you have the death rate, mainly the IMR and the MMR, that is the infant mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate. So then you have the nutritional requirements and the nutritional availability. Focus on girl child and family planning program, which initiated in 1952, which was further strengthened by the National Population Policy for 2000, which talked about free and compulsory education up to 14 years, aimed at reducing the infant mortality rate to less than 30 per 1000 live births, providing universal immunization or vaccination for child for all the preventable vaccinable diseases. Then you have promoting delayed marriage for girls and making family welfare a kind of people-centered program. So these were the basic focus and the highlights of the National Population Policy 2000. With this we cover the class 9th NCERT Geography. We will be starting with class 10th NCERT in the next coming lectures. Have a good day.